The Volante Dominion had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 400 star systems. They had met and cataloged 347 different species. They considered themselves the most advanced civilization in existence, and in many ways they were right. Their sensor technology was their greatest pride. Onthi Deep Scan could read the atomic structure of a ship from 3 light minutes away. It could count the number of crew members on board. It could identify what they had eaten for breakfast. No secret could hide from sensors. This technology had kept them safe for thousands of years. It had helped them avoid dangerous species and identify useful ones. High Observer had served at Monitoring Station 12 for 30 years. He had scanned thousands of ships. In his career, most of them were traders from known species. Some were explorers from minor civilizations. A few were lost vessels that had wandered too far from home. All of them had been cataloged, classified, and filed away. The great database of the Dominion today was supposed to be like any other day. Thixon sat in his command chair, his 4 eyes watching the multiple screens around him. His gray skin reflected the soft blue light of the displays. His long fingers tapped slowly on the armrest. Behind him, a dozen technicians worked at their stations. The hum of computers filled the air. Everything was calm. Everything was routine. Then the alarm sounded. Unknown vessel emerging from Jump Point 7, announced one of the technicians. Her voice was steady but curious. Unknown vessels were rare but not unheard of. They usually turned out to be primitive species taking their first steps into space. Thixon leaned forward in his chair. Show me. The main screen flickered and displayed the image of the ship. It was unlike anything Thixon had seen before. The vessel was angular and sharp. Its hull was painted in dark gray and black. Strange symbols were written on its side in a language the computer did not recognize. The ship moved with a confidence that surprised him. Most first contact vessels drifted slowly, confused by the vastness of space. This one moved like it knew exactly where it was going. Size? Thixon asked. 400 meters in length, 100 meters in width. Approximately 2,000 life signs on board. Thixon's eyes narrowed. 2,000 was a large crew for a ship that size. Most vessels of similar dimensions carried few hundred at most. Perhaps these creatures were very small. Perhaps they packed themselves together like cargo. He had seen stranger things. Origin point of the jump? He asked. Unknown sector. The jump point leads to a region we have not explored. Our maps show nothing there. This was interesting. The Dominion had mapped most of the galaxy. Over the centuries, there were few blank spaces left on their charts. For a species to emerge from an unknown region meant they had developed jump technology on their own without any contact with established civilizations. This was rare. This was worth investigating. Initiate standard first contact protocol. Thixon ordered. Send a greeting in all known languages and begin a deep scan. I want to know everything about this vessel and its crew. The technicians moved quickly. Signals were sent toward the unknown ship. Greeting messages played in hundreds of different languages. Meanwhile, the powerful sensors of the station began their work. Invisible beams of energy reached out toward the strange vessel. They would penetrate its hull, map its interior, and reveal all its secrets. Thixon watched with the patience of experience. He had done this many times before. He expected the scan to reveal a primitive species with basic technology. He expected to see simple weapons, crude engines, and fragile creatures who had somehow stumbled upon the secret of faster-than-light travel. He would catalog them, assign them a classification number, and send a report to Dominion Central. Another day, another species added to the database. The scan began. On board the unknown vessel, a light flickered. It was a small thing, barely noticeable, a brief pulse of amber that ran along the exterior hull. In the language of the ship's builders, it was a warning, a signal that said, "We see you looking at us," but they did not understand this language. They did not notice the flicker. They continued their scan without concern. The first data began to arrive at Thixon Station. It appeared on his screen in neat rows of numbers and symbols. At first, everything seemed normal. The hull was made of metal alloys. The engines used fusion technology. The life forms on board were carbon-based. Standard information for a standard first contact. Then the deeper data started coming in. Thixon's fingers stopped their tapping, and his four eyes focused on the screen. With growing intensity, one of his hearts began to beat faster than another. He leaned closer, certain that he must be misreading the information. "Run a diagnostic on the sensors," he said. "Quietly, sir." The technician looked confused. "Run a diagnostic now. There must be an error." The diagnostic was run. It came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. Thixon stared at the data on his screen. In 30 years of service, he had never seen anything like it. His hands began to tremble. A cold feeling spread through his body. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had not experienced since childhood. "Fear. Contact Dominion Central," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Priority 1 emergency channel." The technicians around him exchanged worried glances. Priority 1 was reserved for existential threats. It had not been used in over a century. "Sir, what should I tell them?" asked the communications officer. Thixon could not take his eyes off the screen. The data continued to pour in, each new piece of information worse than the last. He thought of his children back home. Snorts. He thought of the peaceful worlds of the Dominion. He thought of the thousands of years of civilization that his people had built, and he wondered if any of it would survive what was coming. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that we have made contact with something new, something we have never seen before." He paused, searching for the right words. "Tell them that I think we may have finally found something in the darkness that we should have left alone." On the main screen, the unknown ship continued on its path. Its dark hull reflected the distant starlight. Its strange symbols seemed to mock the watching Valenthy. And somewhere on board that vessel, 2,400 humans went about their daily routines. They did not know they were being scanned. They did not know they had been noticed, and they were just glad to finally find signs of other life in the universe. They could not wait to make friends. The deep scan of the unknown vessel took exactly 4.7 seconds to complete. It was one of the most thorough scans ever performed by Volante Monitoring Station. Every detail was captured. Every system was analyzed. Every corner of the ship was mapped and recorded. Those 4.7 seconds changed everything. High Observer Thyssen stood, frozen at his station as the data filled. His screens around him, his clear's throat. Technicians had stopped working. They stared at their own displays with expressions of confusion and growing horror. The soft hum of the computer seemed louder now. The blue lights of the station seemed colder. "This cannot be correct," whispered one of the technicians. She was young, barely 50 years old. Her name was Caius, and she had specialized in weapons analysis for the past decade. She had studied the armaments of hundreds of species. She thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. "Read it again," Thyssen ordered. His voice was steady, but his 4 hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly that his gray skin had turned white. Curis took a deep breath and began to read the weapons analysis aloud. "The vessel carries 48 kinetic accelerators along its sides. These weapons fire solid projectiles at speeds approaching 5% of light speed. Each projectile weighs approximately 2 kg. She paused to let that sink in. The had abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. They were considered primitive and inefficient. Energy weapons were cleaner, more precise, and easier to maintain. No civilized species used kinetic accelerators anymore, but these were not like the ancient kinetic weapons in the history books. These were something else entirely. "Continue," said Thyssen. "The vessel also carries 24 directed energy weapons. The power output of each weapon is Kira." Stopped. She checked her numbers again. "The power output is equivalent to a small star. They appear to be designed to cut through ship hulls at extreme range." Another technician spoke up. His name was Vaughn, and he handled structural analysis. "The hull itself is remarkable. It is not protected by shields. Instead, it uses layers of physical armor. The outer layer is a composite material that absorbs and disperses energy. Below that is a layer of reactive plating that explodes outward to deflect incoming projectiles. Below that is another layer of solid armor, and below that is yet another layer of reactive plating. They have backup armor for their backup armor," Kyra said in disbelief. "That is not all," Vaughn continued. "The ship has multiple redundant systems, 3 separate engine cores, 4 independent life support systems, 2 complete bridge command centers. If one system fails, another takes over immediately, and if that fails, there is a third waiting." Thyssen felt dizzy. The Volante built their ships with elegant efficiency. 1 engine, 1 life support system, 1 bridge. Why would anyone need more? The answer came to him slowly, and it chilled him to his core. These creatures expected their ships to be damaged. They expected to take hits. They built their vessels to keep fighting even when parts of them were destroyed. "What about missiles?" he asked quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what missiles meant. Missiles were the weapons of last resort. They were used when you wanted to destroy something completely. Most civilized species had banned them centuries ago. Curis pulled up the relevant data. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "The vessel carries 240 missile tubes. Each tube can fire missiles with nuclear warheads. The estimated yield of each warhead is 50 megatons. 50 megatons. That was enough to destroy a small moon, and this single ship carried 240 of them. What kind of creatures build something like this?" asked one of the younger technicians. His voice cracked. With fear, Thixon did not answer. He was too busy reading the next section of the scan results, the section that dealt with the interior of the ship, the section that showed what the crew did. During their time on board, the ship had training rooms. This was normal. All species trained their crews for their duties, but these training rooms were different. They were filled with equipment for physical combat, weights for building muscle strength, mats for wrestling and fighting, targets for shooting practice, racks of weapons designed for hand-to-hand killing. These creatures trained for war the way other species trained for games. There was also a medical bay. Again, this was normal, but the medical bay on this vessel was unlike any Thixon had ever seen. It was massive. It could handle over 100 patients at once. It had equipment for surgery, for treating burns, for reattaching severed limbs. There were machines for keeping creatures alive even when their bodies had been torn apart. They expect to be wounded, Thixon said softly. They expect to lose parts of themselves, and they have built facilities to put themselves back together and continue fighting. Data continue to pour in. Storage rooms filled with ammunition, armories stocked with personal weapons, combat armor for individual soldiers. The ship was not just a vessel, it was a mobile fortress, a weapon of war designed by creatures who understood violence at a fundamental level, and there were 2,400 of them on board. What do we do? Asked Caius. Her voice was barely audible. Thixon did not know. In all his years of service, he had never faced a situation like this. The Valenthi Dominion had maintained peace for 12,000 years by being the most powerful force in their region of space. Their sensors could see any threat coming. Their diplomacy could resolve any conflict. Their technology could defeat any enemy, but this ship challenged everything they knew. This ship suggested that somewhere in the unexplored darkness of space there was a species that had evolved differently, a species that had not learned to resolve conflicts through negotiation, a species that had instead perfected the art of war. Send all data to Dominion Central. Thixon ordered. Maximum encryption. Flag it as critical intelligence. Should we attempt communication? Ask the communications officer. Thixon thought about it. The standard protocol was to establish peaceful contact with new species, to welcome them to the galactic community, to offer trade and friendship. But, looking at the data on his screen, he wondered if these creatures even understood the concept of peace. Everything about their ship spoke of conflict. Everything about their design philosophy assumed that violence was inevitable. No, he said finally, do not contact them. Do not draw their attention. Just watch them and pray that they do not notice us watching. On the main screen, the unknown ship continued on its course, its dark hull cut through the void like a blade. Its weapons remained silent. Its crew remained unaware of the fear they had caused. But in the depths of Valenthi space, alarms were beginning to sound. Messages were being sent. Emergency councils were being assembled. The galaxy was about to learn that it was not as safe as it had believed, and the humans aboard the INS Prometheus were still just hoping to find someone to talk to. The weapons had been terrifying. The ship design had been disturbing, but it was the biological data that broke the spirits of the Valenthi analysts. High observer Thixon sat alone in his private Quarters reading the complete scan. Report for the third time. The lights were dim. A cup of calming tea sat untouched on his desk. His 4 eyes moved across the data with the slow horror of someone watching an accident happen. The creatures on board the unknown vessel called themselves humans. Their name had been found in the unencrypted data files that the scan had captured. Along with that name came information about their species, information that made Thixon want to close the jump point forever and pretend he had never seen the ship. The Vanthi had encountered 347 spacefaring species in their long history. They had profiles for all of them. Most were herbivores who had evolved on gentle worlds with mild climates. Some were filter feeders who had developed technology to escape predators. A few were omnivores who ate both plants and small animals. All of them were peaceful by nature. All of them had learned that cooperation was better than conflict. Humans were none of these things. Humans were predators, not just any predators, but something the database classified as persistence predators. Thixon had to look up what that meant. When he understood, he felt sick. Persistence predators did not kill their prey with speed or ambush. They killed their prey by chasing it until it died of exhaustion. They followed their targets across vast distances, never stopping, never resting until the prey simply could not run anymore. It was a method of hunting that required patience, endurance, and a complete absence of mercy. These creatures had evolved to chase things until those things died of tiredness. The biological analysis continued to paint a nightmare picture. Human bodies were designed for survival in conditions that would kill most species. They could function in temperatures ranging from -40 to +50 degrees. They could survive without water for 3 days and without food for 3 weeks. They could lose up to 40% of their blood and still remain conscious. Their bones were made of a material called calcium. It was essentially internal armor. Their muscles were attached to these bones in a way that allowed for incredible strength relative to their size. They could lift objects many times their own weight. They could run at high speeds for long periods. They could climb, swim, and jump with equal skill, but the most disturbing feature was their damage resistance. Humans could heal from wounds that would kill most species. Their bodies could repair broken bones, regrow damaged tissue, and fight off infection. They could survive the loss of limbs, organs, and large portions of their flesh. They would keep functioning, keep fighting even they should have been dead, and they had built-in chemical systems to help them do this. When a human was threatened, their body released substances called adrenaline and cortisol. These chemicals increased their strength, speed, and aggression. They dulled pain and sharpened focus. They turned an already dangerous creature into something even more deadly. Thixon read about human soldiers who had continued fighting with multiple bullet wounds. He read about humans who had lifted heavy objects off trapped companions using strength they should not have possessed. He read about humans who had walked for miles on broken legs because they refused to give up. These creatures did not know when to stop. They did not understand the concept of acceptable losses. They would keep coming until either they won or they were completely destroyed. The scan had also captured information about the human home world, a planet called Earth in a solar system on the edge of the explored galaxy. The Data about this world was almost as disturbing as the data about its inhabitants. Earth was what scientists called a death world. Its gravity was crushing by galactic standards. Its atmosphere contained a corrosive gas called oxygen at levels that would burn the lungs of most species. Its star bombarded the surface with radiation that caused genetic damage and cancer. The planet was covered in water that was filled with salt and predators. The land masses were plagued by earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, and floods. Weather changed constantly and violently. The temperature could swing from freezing to burning within a single day. And humans had not just survived on this world, they had thrived, they had conquered it, they had spread to every corner of their hostile planet and bent it to their will. They had done this by being tougher, meaner, and more stubborn than anything else on Earth. Thixon put down the report and stared at the wall. His tea had gone cold, his thoughts had gone dark. He thought about the peaceful worlds of the Valanthi Dominion, planets with gentle climates and calm seas, places where children could play outside without fear, places where the most dangerous thing was perhaps a strong wind or a cold winter. How could his people possibly stand against creatures forged in such a hellish environment? Message arrived from Dominion Central. The High Council had convened an emergency session. They had reviewed the scan data. They had reached a decision. The jump point to human space would be closed immediately. No contact would be made. No response would be given to any human transmissions. The Dominion would pretend that this encounter had never happened. With luck, the humans would move on and never return. It was the safest option. It was the wisest option. But as Thixon read the order, he felt a growing sense of doubt. Could you really hide from creatures who had evolved to chase their prey until it dropped? Could you really avoid a species that had conquered a death world through sheer determination? He thought about a line from the human data files, a quote from one of their military leaders. We have not yet begun to fight. What did that even mean? How could a species so devoted to war not have begun to fight? What were they waiting for? What were they capable of when they truly decided to fight? Thixon did not want to find out, but deep in his heart he suspected that the galaxy would learn the answer eventually. Creatures like humans did not stay hidden forever. They explored, they expanded, they conquered. And when they finally met the Valanthi face to face, all the closed jump points in the universe would not be enough to stop them. He finished his cold tea and began composing his resignation letter. He had seen enough. Let someone younger deal with what was coming. He was too old to face the nightmares that hunted without rest. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the scan, 17 different species had intercepted and decoded the Valanthi transmission. Within days, every major civilization in the known galaxy had seen the data. Emergency councils were called. Military forces were put on alert. Diplomatic channels burned with frantic messages. The great assembly of species convened for the first time in 300 years. The assembly met on a neutral station at the center of civilized space. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in the massive circular chamber. They floated, stood, crawled, and hung from their designated positions. Their translators hummed as they tried to make sense of the chaos. Grand Morvax of the Valenth called the assembly to order. His voice was heavy with exhaustion. He had not slept since. The scan results arrived. You have all seen the data, he began. You know why we are here. We have discovered a new species, and they are unlike anything we have ever encountered. The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of species tried to speak at once. Their voices overlapped in a cacophony of fear and confusion. Morvax raised his 4 hands. For silence, please, he said. Let us discuss this calmly. Ambassador Thresh of the Corvani Collective was the first to speak. The Corvani were an insectoid species known for their logic and reason. They did not panic easily, but even Thresh seemed disturbed. We have analyzed the human vessel in detail, Thresh said. His mandibles clicked as he spoke. The weapons are concerning, but they are within the range of what we can defend against. What concerns us more is the philosophy behind the design. He pulled up a holographic display showing the human ship. Every system has multiple backups. Every weapon has alternative firing modes. Every section of the ship can be sealed off and continue functioning independently. This vessel was designed by beings who expect everything to fail, who expect to take damage, who plan for the worst possible outcomes. Another representative spoke up. She was a Mallory, a species of peaceful herbivores who had achieved space flight through cooperation rather than competition. Perhaps they are simply cautious. Perhaps they come from a dangerous region of space where such precautions are necessary. That is exactly the problem, said a new voice. All eyes turned to the speaker. He was a Xanthari, one of the oldest species in the assembly. The Xanthari had been exploring space for over 1 million years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had knowledge that other species could barely imagine. Elder Wise moved slowly to the center of the chamber. His ancient body was supported by a floating chair. His eyes were milky with age, but his mind was still sharp. We extracted additional data from the human vessel's unencrypted files, Yak said. Cultural data, historical data, entertainment data. What we found explains everything about their ship design, and it is far worse than any of you imagine. He activated a new holographic display. Images began to appear, images of human history. These creatures have been fighting each other since before they developed written language, Yak explained. Their earliest records show wars between tribes. As their technology grew, their wars grew. With it, swords became guns, guns became bombs, bombs became nuclear weapons. The display showed images of human wars, soldiers charging across battlefields, cities burning, mushroom clouds rising over devastated landscapes. They discovered how to split the atom, Yak continued. One of the most profound scientific achievements in the universe. And what did they do with this knowledge? They built weapons, weapons capable of destroying entire cities in a single flash, and then they used these weapons on themselves. The chamber fell silent. Even the most jaded representatives were stunned. The idea of using nuclear weapons on your own species was almost incomprehensible. It gets worse, Yak said. They have had 2 global wars, conflicts that involved nearly every nation on their planet. Hundreds of millions of their own kind died in these wars, and yet they did not stop. They did not learn. They kept building more weapons, kept developing new ways to kill. He changed the display. Again, now it showed clips from human entertainment, movies with explosions, and gunfights, video games where players killed enemies for fun, stories about heroes who solve problems through violence. This is what they do for entertainment. Yak said they simulate war, they celebrate warriors. Their heroes are not scientists or artists or diplomats. Their heroes are soldiers, fighters, killers. Ambassador Thresh leaned forward. Surely not all of them are like this. Every species has variation. Of course, Yax agreed, but consider this. The ship we scanned, the one with the nuclear missiles and the kinetic accelerators and the redundant armor in their military classification system, it is labeled as a light escort frigate. It is one of their smallest warships. The chamber erupted again. This time, Morvex did not try to restore order. He was too shocked himself. Light escort frigate, the most terrifying vessel they had ever seen, was considered light by human standards. What did their heavy warships look like? What weapons did their battleships carry? Yax waited for the noise to die down. Then he delivered his final piece of information. We have also intercepted some of their internal communications. They do not know we can read them yet. Would you like to know what they are saying about this encounter? Every representative in the chamber leaned forward. They are excited, Yak said. They have been searching for other intelligent life for centuries. They have dreamed of this moment. They want to meet us. They want to be friends. He paused to let that sink in. They sent a message into space. A greeting. They call it, we come in peace. They mean it sincerely. They genuinely want peaceful relations with us. The Mallory ambassador looked relieved. Then perhaps we have nothing to fear. Perhaps they are not the monsters we imagine. Yoke shook his ancient head slowly. You do not understand. These creatures have fought wars that killed hundreds of millions. They have built weapons that can destroy worlds. They have turned violence into entertainment, and they consider themselves peaceful. They believe they are friendly. He looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of the galaxy's representatives. Imagine what they are like when they are angry. Grand Assembly voted unanimously to close all routes to human space. They would hide. They would wait. They would hope that the humans never found them. But even as they voted, every representative in that chamber knew the truth. You could not hide from persistence. Predators. You could not escape creatures who had conquered a death world. You could not outrun beings who refused to give up. The humans would find them eventually, and when they did, the galaxy would have to face the most terrifying thing in the universe. Friendly human who just wanted to shake hands. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Anais Prometheus, holding a cup of coffee in her hands. The steam rose in lazy spirals. The smell filled the command center with warmth. Around her, the crew went about their duties with quiet efficiency. Screens glowed with data. Keyboards clicked softly. The hum of the ship's engines provided a constant background rhythm. It was a good morning, a historic morning. 3 days ago they had made humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. After centuries of wondering if they were alone in the universe, humans finally had their answer. There was other intelligent life out there. The galaxy was full of neighbors waiting to be met. Alina had expected the aliens to respond to their greeting. She had expected questions curiosity, perhaps even excitement. What she had not expected was silence. Any response to our messages, she asked. Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell, her communications officer, shook his head. His dark face was creased with confusion. Nothing, Captain. We've been broadcasting on every frequency we can. Think of universal mathematical patterns, binary code, even plain English, just in case. They're receiving our signals, but they're not responding. Strange, Alina murmured. She took a sip of her coffee. What about the station that scanned us? Any activity there? Negative. It went dark about an hour after the scan powered down. Its sensors stopped all transmissions. It's like they shut everything off and went home. Alina frowned. That was not the behavior she would expect from a first contact situation. When humans discovered something new, they studied it obsessively. They asked questions. They poked and prodded until they understood it. This species had taken one look at the Prometheus and decided they wanted nothing to do with it. Did we do something to offend them? She wondered aloud. Her executive officer, Commander Sarah Chen, walked over with a tablet in her hands. Her short black hair was slightly messy from a long shift. Her eyes were sharp with intelligence. I've been analyzing their scan, Sarah said. It was incredibly thorough. They basically mapped our entire ship down to the atomic level. They know everything about us, our weapons, our defenses, our crew complement, even our biological data. Alina raised an eyebrow. Everything. Everything. They probably know what we had for breakfast. Alina considered. This being scanned so thoroughly without permission was a bit rude by human standards, but perhaps that was normal for these aliens. Different species had different customs. You could not expect everyone to follow Earth etiquette. Maybe they're just cautious, she said. Maybe they need time to process the information before they respond. Sarah hesitated. There was something in her expression that suggested she had a different theory. Alina noticed it immediately. What is it? Sarah pulled up some data on her tablet. I've been reviewing the scan results, the way they structured their analysis, the categories they used. Captain, I think they were evaluating us as a threat. A threat? Alina almost laughed. We're one ship, a light frigate. That, we're not exactly a conquering armada. I know why, but look at this. Sarah showed her the tablet. It displayed a breakdown of how the alien scan had categorized different aspects of the Prometheus. Weapons received the highest priority. Defensive systems came second. Crew. Biological data came third. Navigation and propulsion were barely analyzed at all. They spent 80% of their scanning power on our combat capabilities, Sarah explained. They weren't curious about where we came from or how we got here. They just wanted to know how dangerous we are. Alina stared at the data. Cold feeling settled in her stomach. She thought about the Prometheus from an outside perspective. The missile tubes, the rail guns, the armor plating, the marine barracks, the extensive medical facilities designed to treat combat wounds. To a human, these were standard features. Every naval vessel had them. You did not send people into space without the ability to defend them. It was just common sense. But what if these aliens had never seen anything like it? What if their ships were unarmed? What if they had never needed weapons because they had never faced threats? Dear God, Alina whispered. We scared them. Sarah nodded slowly. I think we terrified them. They probably think we're some kind of war machine, a species that does nothing but fight. Elelina sat down. Her coffee cup, her mind raced through the implications. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for first contact. They had imagined 100 different scenarios: friendly aliens, hostile aliens, indifferent aliens, advanced aliens, primitive aliens, but they had never imagined this. They had never considered that they might be the scary ones. What do we do? Sarah asked. Elelina thought for a long moment. Her first instinct was to back off, to withdraw the Prometheus to a safe distance and wait for the aliens to calm down, but that felt wrong. Humans did not run from problems, they faced them head on. Besides, this was too important. First contact was not something you could just walk away from. The entire future of human-alien relations might depend on what happened. In the next few days, we keep trying, she said finally. We send more messages. Peaceful ones. We explain that we're not here to fight, we're explorers. Scientists, we just want to talk, and if they don't respond, Elna smiled. Slightly, it was the kind of smile that had scared enemy commanders across 3 star systems. Then we find another way. We don't give up, that's not who we are. She walked to the main view screen and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was hiding. From her little ship, an entire galaxy was afraid of humanity. The thought was absurd and sad at the same time. Humans had dreamed of the stars since they first looked up at the night sky. They had fought and struggled and sacrificed to reach this moment. They had built ships that could cross the vast emptiness between worlds. They had sent their best and brightest into the unknown, and all they wanted was to meet their cosmic neighbors. We'll find a way to show them we're not monsters, Elena said quietly. We'll prove that humans can be friends as well as fighters. It might take time, it might be difficult, but we'll do it. Behind her, Commander Chen muttered something under her breath, something about humans being optimistic even when the universe was running away from them. Elelina heard it and chuckled. That's what makes us human, Sarah. We never know when to quit. She turned back to face her crew. These were good people, brave people. They had volunteered for a mission that might have led to nothing. Instead, it had led to the most important discovery in human history. All hands, she announced over the ship's intercom. This is the captain. As you know, we have made contact with an alien civilization. They seem to be a bit nervous about us. Can't imagine why. Laughter rippled through the ship. Everyone knew what the Prometheus looked like. You did not build a warship and expect people to think you were harmless. Our mission has not changed, Elena continued. We are here to explore, to learn, and to make friends. The universe is bigger than we ever imagined. There are neighbors out there waiting to be met, and we're going to meet them whether they like it or not. She paused, her voice softening. So let's show them what humanity is really about. Not our weapons, not our armor, but our curiosity, our kindness, our stubborn refusal to give up on anyone or anything. She clicked off the intercom and looked back at the stars. Navigation, she called out. Plot a course to the nearest inhabited system. It's time to introduce ourselves properly. I Captain Course laid in, ready to jump on your command. Elelina Vasquez took a deep breath. Somewhere out there, an entire galaxy was afraid of what was coming. They had seen humanity's weapons and run in. Terror, they had no idea that the real power of humanity had nothing to do with missiles or armor. It was their hearts, their hope, their endless stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Engage, she said, and the Prometheus jumped toward the stars, carrying humanity's dream of friendship to a universe that was not ready for it. But they would be. Humans were very good at making friends, even when those friends started out running away.